So initially, we talked about the hormones being like three major groups and reproductive hormones, adrenal, thyroid. So now we're adding in group number four. Group number four is what you're here for. Okay. So these are the appetite. I'm going to call them the appetite. They really are metabolic hormones. But again, I don't want to reduce metabolism to just eating, so they are effectively metabolism hormones, but they really function by controlling how you eat. And this is the fourth group. So we're talking here about hormones such as leptin and ghrelin and insulin. Now, we've also got glucagon, I guess you could say, in here as well. So these are the ones that help you feel full after a meal, or potentially they make you feel constantly ravenous. And if that's the case, and you have low levels of leptin and high levels of ghrelin, got a bit of a seesaw relationship there, then that can lead you to feeling constantly hungry. That makes you eat more. That makes you gain weight. Typical scenario would be that you have a full meal, and ideally you would normally remember when you were younger feeling really full after this meal, but for some reason you're still hungry. And so you put your meal down, put your spoons and forks away, wash the dishes, and then you feel like eating something again. This is a pretty clear sign that there are issues with your leptin and your ghrelin. Okay, so you'd be wanting to look at both of those. But it also suggests that you have something known as metabolic inflexibility. And metabolic inflexibility is reflective of your body's inability to adapt to changing circumstances in terms of what you're eating. If you had enough food, good, your body should really sense that, respond to it, and stop making you feel hungry. Have you not had enough? Well, your ghrelin should now increase and make you feel like you're hungry. And when that all starts to go awry, and this is in a way, I have to say, one of my issues with intermittent fasting and long duration fasting, it can mess these hormones around a bit. You've got to do it right, right for your body type and right for your age as well. So you can develop metabolic inflexibility, which means that you now have an kind of disturbed response to food, and leptin may be reducing and ghrelin might be increasing. But there's another thing that can happen here, which is that leptin might be constantly elevated, and that can lead to a condition known as leptin resistance. I'm spending a little bit more time to just mention these sorts of states and conditions because they're all your main concerns when it comes to cortisol belly. So increasing ghrelin is really, really common in perimenopause. There was a study done on women in perimenopause. Their ghrelin levels were 6 times higher than women who were, premenopausal. So, like 20s, for example, early 30s, and women who were postmenopausal. So it was really those women in that interim period in perimenopause, average age 38 to 50, that were experiencing these super high levels of ghrelin. And it becomes extra important for us as women in this age range to have really healthy snacks on hand, have it ready to go, so that you're not tempted to eat anything else that might seem convenient and comforting. So the other hormone here that I just wanted to mention was insulin. Insulin actually is very important because insulin interplays with the reproductive hormones and quite strongly with estrogen as well. They have a similar sort of energy to them. They're both very yin, which means what I mean by yin in the Chinese yin-yang system is that they are both hormones that tend to like to get a little bit stuck and heavy and proliferate. And they're energizing hormones as well. So insulin can get an energy all about itself. This is why sometimes you're more likely to hear about high levels of insulin and high levels of estrogen than you are to hear about high levels of progesterone. So insulin can become a little bit proliferative in the same way that estrogen can. And insulin can lead to, or constantly elevated levels of insulin can lead to a condition known as insulin resistance, which I will just abbreviate to IR. And this you may have heard about because insulin resistance is implicated in diabetes and pre-diabetes. And by the way, not everyone who develops insulin resistance will go on to develop diabetes. Roughly, I think about half, somewhere around that amount. But it is one of the precursors, and it's going to explain in part again the development of cortisol belly. So as you can see, there are a lot of hormonal reasons why someone might develop a cortisol belly. And, if it feels a little bit overwhelming, don't worry, because you don't actually have to figure this out yourself. That's what people like me are here for. Go and see your doctor, go and see your naturopath, go and see someone who can do some testing to assess what's happening with all of these hormones. That's going to be the best thing that you can do to get an idea of what's actually happening with your hormones. So the leptin and ghrelin are the hormones that are involved in appetite and feeling satisfied after eating, and where you start to get the leptin behaving, well, actually leptin just does what it does, but the cells can become more resistant to it. That means that you're going to get problems with controlling your appetite. Ghrelin, when it gets high, is also going to lead to problems with controlling appetite. There are some key life phases and some conditions that can directly cause weight gain, and they also involve those hormones, leptin and ghrelin. So one of them that I mentioned already is menopause in women, because I think it's such a great example of a massive hormonal, call it a recalibration, that's going on. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is another example, and liver disorders like fatty liver, a whole host of other conditions as well, are all examples of where you might have issues with leptin, insulin, and ghrelin. For example, in menopause, low levels of estrogen can actually lead to reduced levels of leptin. So imagine that you're eating your food, but you're not getting that satisfaction messaging from the brain when you finish eating. So that means that you continue to eat, or that you don't really realize when your stomach is full. And it can also contribute to feeling constantly hungry. And a vicious cycle can emerge then when it comes to weight gain. In contrast, high levels of testosterone can also lead to low levels of leptin. And again, there you're seeing this dynamic where some sort of hormonal imbalance from some random hormone is affecting your metabolism, which then affects your body composition and how much fat you're laying down and where you're laying it down. And in this case, you're gaining weight from an elevated hormone, testosterone, rather than one that might be deficient, like estrogen. So I'm going to leave it there for this video. There'll be more videos to follow. Hopefully you're finding this useful as a way to, demystify cortisol belly. See you soon in another video. Oh, but you know what? I should actually summarize everything that we've been talking about, just so that we wrap things up cleanly, right? So we've been talking about cortisol belly, the fact that it is or has a relationship with stress and chronic persisting stress. We've also noted that things like being overweight or obese already is going to have an effect on how you handle stress and therefore how you release cortisol. We know that cortisol has a tendency to increase your fat depositions around the central area of your body, your visceral area. I'm going to talk about this more in another video too. But we also know it has other sorts of physiological effects, such as increasing your blood glucose levels and increasing your blood pressure, both of which are seen as metabolic risk factors when it comes to conditions like diabetes or heart disease. We talked about a number of hormones and the fact that they all stem from cortisol. So looking at your cortisol results when you get them back, it's a really good way to start assessing your metabolic health. Anything that you see that is unusual, you start reading into it, or you come to see someone like me because I do this on a daily basis and I work with people on hormonal conditions like this. So cortisol belly, metabolic, lots of hormones involved. You might think that hormones are all just about fertility, but we now know we've got thyroid, adrenal, fertility, and metabolic aspects to the hormones. And before I finish, the only way that you will really make significant changes to cortisol belly is by normalizing that hormonal environment, and also by changing your diet in a way that suits you, your life phase, and your body composition. See you soon in another video. Thank you for listening.